Thank you. Are we live? We are? All right. Apologies for Chris tonight, he's away. Firstly, I'll just do a statement of acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge this land we meet on today, traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So thanks for that. I've got various staff in the room, but really the first hour is a chance for Jensen, our consultants on the Town Centre project, to run a workshop with you, to tease out some key issues and learnings, to pick your brain, if you like, on what you see as important. And when we get to 8 o'clock, we will cut to the chase and get to the next presentation, because we've got another one on economic development, which David will run. So with that ado, I will bring Michael McEwen and his team forward to present, and talk to you soon. Oh, and I know the Mayor has to leave at 8:15. Okay.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, good evening, councillors. Michael McEwen from Jensen Plus. It's really nice to see you again. You might remember we worked together in 2024 on your Gawler Growth Framework project, and I do remember having some really productive workshop sessions with yourselves through that process, so it's really nice to see you again and be back here. My colleague Pat is sitting at the back there. He's going to help with the workshop session. So we're here to talk about what we've been doing on the Gawler Town Centre Structure Plan and Development Delivery Framework. I guess the story so far, and also it's a chance to get your input to the vision and principles and some of the directions that the investigations might go in. There's a couple of other consultants who are working with us on the project. They're not actually here tonight, so we've got BE Engineering, who are helping with transport and traffic input. David Snoswell, who's a planner and property economist. He's done some work on land use opportunities, and I'll summarise his conclusions so far. And Phillips Pilkington Architects, I've got some of their material looking at heritage and adaptive reuse opportunities. Okay, so in this session, there's really 3 parts, the last part being quite small, but we're going to do a little bit of a presentation for the first 25 minutes, just to make sure you're up to date on the information that we have generated so far, particularly a snapshot of some of the technical investigations that we've been doing. We'll also get an update on some of the engagement that Stacey, who I think is online, and the staff have been working on in parallel. Stacey might even speak to that part. We'll see how we go at that moment. And then there'll be a chance for a quick Q&A just on the technical investigation. So if you've got any questions on the technical information, just hold to the end of that part 1. But we want to get to part 2, which is a workshop session, and I've really got 4 questions that I want to work through with you around the town centre vision and where that might be heading. We've got a little bit of a, I wouldn't say multiple choice, a kind of 2 choice. Would you prefer this or this exercise? And I want to review some guiding principles information with you, and then I want to talk to you, if we've got time, about some of the development scenarios that we might test over the next month or so, and get your feedback on that, and sort of take our long list of scenarios down to a slightly smaller list. And then right at the end, we'll just tell you what we're going to do in the next part of the session, or the project, sorry. Does that sound okay for everyone? Great. Okay, so just as a quick recap or a refresh about the town centre study area, which does cover both sides of the river corridor. You know, from the north, we include the area around the rail station and the Coles shopping centre, some of the larger development there, right through Murray Street in the sort of central precinct to the southern part of Murray Street in the southern precinct. We did include the river open space corridor as part of the study area. Initially, it wasn't included in our investigations, but we thought that was important to include that. And we've also got a precinct down at Adelaide Road, which is also a kind of important commercial precinct, but with a bit of a different character. So we've got some different areas. We already know that there's going to be different land use characters and development patterns in those areas. Picking some of that up even from your 2016 urban design framework. And so just as a little bit of a recap and a flavour of some of the locations that we are looking at. Again, a bit of a recap. These are actually my words, but you probably remember there's two parts to this project, the structure plan and the development delivery framework. I also just had a go at just writing a few simple words about what I see the aim being for this overall project, what I think is really about guiding and attracting future investment into the Gawler Town Centre. Could be private investment, could be public investment. So that's the kind of overall aim. When we break it down into the components, the structure plan will include a vision for the future. It's going to focus a lot on land use. It should certainly guide the form and scale of design of that land use, of those future developments. It should talk about the future urban form. It's going to be informed by community input, and it's probably got that longer term outlook, the 20 or 30 year kind of pattern. How much growth and change are we going to accommodate in the town centre over that period? The development delivery framework, which Andrew was reminding me is very important, you know, because we don't want a plan for the shelf, we want action. It's got to be more implementation focused. It's going to have some focus on transport and public realm solutions and designs, because they are some of the things that you as a council and other agencies are responsible for delivering. So we want our solutions to be costed, we want an action plan, and it's going to be a 10-year kind of focus, because no plan lasts forever, so we've got to focus on things that can be programmed and delivered over 10 years. So that's also important to keep in mind with this work that we're doing. One of Stacey's slides, just summarising the process a little bit. On the left-hand side, we've got 5 stages of our investigations. We're actually doing stages 2 and 3 at the moment, which is the kind of structure plan investigations and also the transport investigations. In the middle there is a little diagram which Stacey used at the Business and Community Reference Group meeting last week or the week before, just to show that there's some different stakeholder groups that are being engaged with, the community directly, businesses and landowners through that reference group, and yourselves. And Stacey will give us an update on the community engagement a bit later. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to the technical investigations now, and this is one slide. I've summarised David Snoswell's town centre market assessment, and what he means by that is what is the future development and land use kind of mix that we should be planning for. So there's some really important things here, because this tells us what to try and design for. And this work does build upon some work that David did in 2023, which looked at retail and commercial land uses, but it's got a broader range of land uses now. And some highlight information, he does suggest that there could be an additional 16,000 square metres of retail and shopfront floor space that we might have to plan for over the next 20 or so years. So can that be accommodated in the town centre is a really big question for this study. And that number is based on a revised sort of regional population catchment, which includes your surrounding growth areas of well over 100,000 people. But interestingly, even though the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan pumped up the regional population more than it was in 2023, David does think that as some of those growth areas also get more established, there will be a bit of a ceiling on the kind of retail magnet, if you like, of the town centre, and so we won't really get beyond that 16,000 square metre figure. It won't just keep going up forever. So in his opinion, we should aim for the 16,000, and that's that top land use in the table there. There's also a few other land uses that we want to be planning for. We do think there's a scope for some residential accommodation in the town centre, a relatively modest 200 dwellings, perhaps, over the next 20 or 30 years, which is not a huge number, but could still bring a level of activation and vitality to the town centre. Commercial office, a relatively modest amount of commercial office, so David's suggesting 2 or 3 opportunities of about 2,000, 3,000 square metres each, which could form part of a mixed-use development. Healthcare is a growing area across the country, and there is quite a lot of development in the integrated medical centre kind of development typology. So we're not talking about hospitals, we're not talking about really small one-off sort of GP clinics. We're talking about bigger facilities that have GPs, that have specialist services, pharmacies, etc. And the private sector is developing and building these types of facilities, and the town centre could be a location where one or more of these facilities are viable. Visitor accommodation has been identified as a gap, I think, in what's on offer in Gawler and the town centre. Now, David thinks that a relatively modest 50 visitor accommodation units could be the number. We know that the recently approved development on Murray Street, I think, has 26 already, so perhaps it could be slightly higher than that, but looking at more the service department form of visitor accommodation. And also David's suggesting that there's definitely scope for more what he calls community attractors, so entertainment, food, beverage, definitely with a growing population, more scope for that kind of development as well, which could be in part of the sort of retail shopfront style of accommodation. But look, that does give us at least 6 land use segments to plan for, and there's a few others there which he's suggesting are not really going to be the top contenders in the town centre, although they may happen close to the town centre. So this really gives us a good basis to work on with the town centre structure planning. Okay, I'm going to jump to the next topic. So Phillips Pilkington Architects have started to do some analysis of the built heritage and the adaptive reuse potential of some of the heritage properties. So they have done a report. They've only sent it to me today, so I've done a little snapshot here. It first of all highlights really well just the extent of heritage value, of course, in the town centre. There's 66, by our count, state or local heritage places in the town centre study area, including part of the state heritage area, the Churchill State Heritage Area, and heritage overlays, of course, go beyond that and represent the buildings, so there's a lot of heritage property. So we've analysed that, and there's a streetscape analysis, but I think the interesting thing that they've done, and here's a little sample, they've actually looked at each of the heritage and non-heritage properties, and they've done quite a high-level assessment to work out, well, where is the potential to either redevelop or adaptively reuse, or with conditions improve some of those properties. So they've actually worked their way through, and they've developed a little coding system to identify, you know, the integrity of the building, its condition, its utilisation, to then provide a recommendation about how many of the sites reasonably could be redeveloped for other land uses. And my quick review of their work is there's quite a lot. So it's not it doesn't appear to be a highly restrictive analysis. It's actually suggesting there's good potential for sensitive redevelopment of many sites. There's good potential for sensitive adaptive reuse of many sites. So this is good information for us to use. So Martin at BE Engineering has also done some work on transport, and we've actually been using, with the suggestion of the staff team, a format called movement in place in our transport assessment. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of or used the movement in place framework before, but it's a little bit different from a traditional road hierarchy system where, you know, you get freeways and arterial roads and collector roads, and it's all just a hierarchy based on how many cars or trucks are on the road. The movement in place is a newer way of thinking about streets and roads that considers the transport function, the movement function, but also the place function as well. So how important is that street for land use or amenity or cultural use or other kind of activities? And by taking both of these measures and plotting them on a matrix, you might be able to see the matrix down the bottom here, it's actually a more sophisticated way of thinking about how we should plan for our streets. Because of course, a street has those functions, the movement function, which is often about conveying people and freight and saving time. And at the same time, in conflict with that sometimes, the place function, which is actually about making a place more attractive to spend time. So how do you work with these things together? Well, movement in place is a good way of doing that. We did a workshop with the team a few weeks ago, and we looked at many of the streets and roads and the segments of them in the town centre. And we've been thinking about what is the condition, movement in place condition of some of these streets today and also in the future, okay? So we can use this to determine and also explain not just where we want to make changes, but why we want to make those changes. So it's a little bit complicated, it can be a little bit sophisticated, but it's a good, robust method to form an argument for making change and also to communicate it with anyone, really. So this is quite exciting. So still a work in progress, but already we can see several streets where we think maybe the place function should change. So for example, Murray Street, increasing the place function, putting it higher up the scale to make it even more important and emphasising that, and possibly reducing the movement function a little bit. Now that might be self-evident to all of you because of the traffic numbers and it's a long-standing kind of issue, but using this framework helps to rationalise a decision against another street. We've also got some comments around Julian Terrace, which is probably staying in the same movement function, but possibly even improving its place function as well. And High Street's an interesting case because we might want to improve its place function, but it could also have more of a movement function as well for certain modes of transport. So I won't get into it too much, but all I want to say is we use this framework to help inform what any traffic and public realm interventions might be and to rationalise that and justify that. So a lot more detail to come on that. And last but not least, or it probably is least, we have of course been doing the planning and urban design assessment as well for the town centre, starting with the strategic and policy context, and maybe similar to what I discussed with you 18 months ago on the growth framework. There's an endless number of plans and strategies, but we're trying to pick out the ones that are really important. So your 2016 urban design framework is actually still quite important. It sets some really good design parameters to build to, as is the growth framework that we did together in 2024, which has also got some principles and some context. The Greater Adelaide Regional Plan is also quite interesting because it does set a bit of vision around what they call living locally and having walkable, accessible precincts, and maybe the Gawler Town Centre can be one as well. And there's lots of other more detailed plans and strategies that we've been sieving through. We've been doing some mapping. Shannon's been very helpful actually in really analysing and integrating some of the data that you've got. So we've been doing that analysis, and you do it layer by layer to really understand what's there at the moment and whether there's any kind of gaps, anomalies, etc. Sometimes it's a case of mapping what you already know, because you already know where Woolworths and Coles and Target and the like are. But it's interesting when you see it, the bigger format businesses are all located away from the traditional main street, because of course that's made up of much smaller properties. Those bigger businesses are also on consolidated parcels, because consolidation is effectively a route to those larger scale developments. So that leads us to think about, well, where are the possible future consolidations and land ownerships, because then that could also lead to strategic development sites. So land use, building footprints, analysing how much building there already is in the town centre. I mean, I think it's 47% of the land in the town centre already has a building on it. So it's got quite a high site coverage, but it does vary a little bit through the precinct. Building heights, of course, a relatively low-scale town centre at the moment, and with the topography, it's an interesting debate about, well, what are the opportunities for more height, and where could that be, and how could that be sensitively or not sensitively adapted into the town centre. Relatively few vacant sites, relatively few vacant buildings. We counted 15 vacant buildings along Murray Street and 4 along Adelaide Road at the moment, and relatively few vacant land parcels. That does tell us a few things. There are town centres that have big vacant sites on them that they've been struggling to develop for decades. That is not really the case here, which does mean that it's going to be quite interesting to look at where the redevelopment is going to happen. Landscape and open space is also really interesting. We've been able to map and measure the existing canopy cover, which across the area total is about 20%, but of course that includes the river corridor. So excluding the river corridor, 12% of the town centre study area has already got trees or vegetation on it. And what should our target be for the future? Should we be looking at a 30% target across the town centre, including perhaps the river corridor? Is that achievable? How would we do that? These are the questions that we want to ask ourselves now for that design phase to come. And this is a really important one, strategic sites. So I think the council team had already identified, I think, 9 strategic sites based on things like ownership, site size, current land use or underuse. Now we've actually added another 10 locations through the sieving that we've been doing and the discussions with the team, where potentially land use and redevelopment is plausible in the next 20 to 30 years. And interestingly, that does include at least 4 that I counted that are owned or part owned by the council. So, you know, including, for example, the ambulance and fire stations right down in the south, which are maybe changing in their land use in the next period. So what's the future of those? You do have some control over that. So there's some pretty interesting opportunities by looking at strategic sites. So just summing up, you know, 8 features, you can kind of read them yourself, of the spatial analysis, and I've mentioned a couple of those things. You know, it does tell us that the larger developments are happening on consolidated parcels, not necessarily on the primary streets. Heritage is a major constraint, but also a major opportunity. Interesting opportunities around height, canopy cover, views, and those strategic sites. I think they're going to lead us into the next phase a little bit around scenario development. Okay, so we've got a little bit of an engagement update. Does Stacey want to speak to these slides, Stacey?
Can you hear me?
We can. Roger?
Perfect. Excellent. I'm glad that it worked. I won't take up too much of your time, and Michael, I'll get you to change the slides when required. Apologies, I'm not there in person. As you can tell, I'm a little bit croaky. I've been quite sick this week, but didn't want to miss out on this evening. So, but I'll give you a quick rundown of the engagement results to date. The survey only closed at midnight on Sunday night, so we're just going through the data now. But to start, I thought I would give a very quick update that we had our first business and community reference group meeting. We have our 18 members, and we got some really great discussion with them, and they were able to give us their what's most important to them and why they chose to nominate. And so I've highlighted some of the key themes for that, and that'll be summarised in the forthcoming engagement report for Council. Now, just to give you a quick summary of the engagement results, so our age breakdown from the respondents is really excellent, pretty good numbers across all age brackets, so that'll give us some really good data that we can then go into to see how different age groups responded in different ways. To set a baseline, we asked our respondents, you know, what do they like most about the town centre currently, and obviously strong likes across the board for a number of things. Local shops and businesses was the highest, cafes, restaurants, places to eat was the second highest. From that respondent group, it's important to note that 23 people from that group are actually from those living outside our council area, and typically Calbeaver, Hewitt, Roseworthy were mentioned from those respondents. So not only are we getting town hall residents really interested in what's happening in the town centre, but we're getting these adjoining council areas, which is good. And we asked the question, were they aware that growth and change was likely going to need to occur in order for us to remain competitive? Resounding response of very high, yes, absolutely, which I think sets the framework really well for future change in what we might propose. Next slide, Michael.
Thanks.
Perfect. And so then we started to ask for people to rank. We gave them 8 options. They're all listed up on the screen, and we asked them to rank them from their highest importance to their lowest importance of what they would like to see change or improved. Free-flowing traffic was absolutely the highest, and it maintained the highest throughout the entire survey response timeline. But people also want a pedestrian-friendly environment, and that's the challenge for Michael and us in how we respond to that. But interestingly, the lowest of that was more car parking was second lowest. So again, we're looking into that narrative and how we can make these improvements, and not necessarily increasing car parking and only increasing car parking when and if it's required. And the last question we asked was, what's your one big idea for the Gawler Town Centre? And as you can see from this word cloud I created, there are a number of different suggestions, and I'm really stoked with the amount of information and suggestions we've gotten from the community. Didn't have time to break them all down and pull out the key responses today, but I will summarise and put it in a communique for elected members soon, and I'll include all of the discussion in a full engagement report in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacey. Okay, we're going to move on to the workshop session in just a moment, and those 4 questions I've got to discuss with you. But just before I do that, is there any kind of clarification questions that anyone needs? So save your visionary ideas for a minute or two, but was there anything in the material that you weren't sure about or needed to ask about?
Just briefly with the survey, do we know how many respondents we got to it?
Stacey?
Yes, yeah, sorry, there was 128 and I'm still receiving through a couple hard copy through the mail, so I'll add to that as they come through. I'm expecting there'll probably be about 130 plus a couple of like emails separate to the survey.
Yeah, and really strong interest in the reference group as well, which is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other quick questions, councillors? Okay. All right, let's go to the workshop activity, and Pat's going to come down and take some notes here. So I've got these 4 questions that I want to discuss with you. And I suppose starting at the sort of highest level, and this is an individual question here, because I would actually like to hear from each of the councillors in turn, so I need to give you a moment or two to absorb the question. But in working towards what the vision might be, I'm really interested in, for each of you, you know, what one change, what one thing would you individually prioritise for Galway Town Centre's future? You know, what is your big idea or your top priority? We'd really like to hear from you individually, and we'll take a note of them and make sure you can all see them. So I guess not giving you much time to prepare for that, I suppose I should ask who wants to go first so that I don't pick on someone who's not ready. Does anyone know their idea? Yes.
I'd really like to see the main street to become more of an arcade sort of thing, so remove all the traffic from it, really activate that. That's probably a big part that I like to go to the town centre, get a lot more interaction in there.
All right, so Murray Street pedestrianise or really make it a pedestrian focused street. That's a really strong idea, thank you. Who would like to go next?
Mine's much the same, but I would add that it would make it not only pedestrian friendly, but stopping places along the way for people to stop and rest or, you know, whatever they want to do. So some public realm areas, seating, shade, whatever, outdoor sitting, that type of thing as well. So not only easy to walk up and down, but some places where people can actually actively stop and do things.
Yeah, so some gathering places, and maybe not only in Murray Street, that could be in other places around the town centre. Yeah? Okay, so don't feel you have to build upon that one idea individually. You could have something completely different. Nathan?
I'm going to do my best to try to get my one idea merged into one, so bear with me. I like the idea of accommodation on the main street, whether that's permanent residency or hotel or service departments, to promote that foot traffic model that ultimately hopefully leads into more eateries, more cafes and the like. And partnered with that, if you imagine the end of the main street becoming that accommodation precinct with a whole bunch of other opportunities up the main street as well, imagine where Steinborners is actually turning into a Henley Square-esque sort of offering that provides that linkage between Murray Street and Julian Terrace and the river corridor that actually turns that entrance statement as you come over Mill Bridge, promoting the accommodation offering, the square offering, the tying into the main street, activation of Julian Terrace. I think that would be a fantastic offering for pedestrian movement, but you can't forget the other end of the main street as well, which I think this building actually helps complement, and you keep on going up. So that would be ideal.
So let's try and summarise that. So it's a residential, which could be like a hotel or residential kind of development, linking the river and the Murray Street in that central area. So it's got a bit of a spatial thing. So yeah, it's definitely about visitor and residential accommodation, and it's definitely about that location. And I think I also heard like a high quality destination, creating a kind of residential visitor destination at that location.
Walker Place also plays that link as well, so it's just more of that.
Okay, I'm sure Pat will do a really good job in getting the keywords down. Yeah. Yes.
So the controversy already. I think for me, I agree with a lot of what's been said already, is having the main street, no, this is about town centre, but the main street in particular being a place which enhances community, whether that's through activity, social interaction, commercial offerings, and is distinct and unique in its character, and maintains that sense of what Gawler is. So I think, just to put a couple of caveats on that, if you want to, not that height restrictions is something which we talk about often, but if you want to build high rises, that can probably be done down in the Cuddler area. There's something different about Murray Street in particular. And the other caveat is that the flow of traffic is very important, but whether that actually needs to be through the main street as opposed to an alternative route, as long as there's a way to get traffic through, that main street could be really quite impactful in creating that sense of community and offering a space for certain types of commercial offerings as well. Because once again, it's probably not it's not somewhere you compete with a mall. It's not somewhere you can compete with a sort of your Gawler Green type offering. It's probably more unique, those restaurants, those other things in there.
Okay, and we've got a little prompt question or two about that coming up. But I think what you were really saying is that it's development that's in character with Gawler, and it's the right kind of Gawler scale, and also provides the mix of, it's that community commercial mix that's kind of fits with the kind of Gawler character. Is that some of what you were saying? Or?
Yeah, it is that community commercial mix, but it's not, it's probably not as strict as that. The community side of things, if you go out and you're spending a day in Murray Street, you can spend a day there, and just because you're going shopping there for a commercial purpose doesn't mean you don't have social interactions with people, doesn't mean you can't catch up with a friend at the same time, have a coffee, have a meal, those kind of things. So they go hand in hand, and I don't think it's clearly defined one or the other.
Okay, so it's very building, much a mixed use, vibrant town centre.
Mixed use, vibrant, bustling, but it is enhancing that sense of community through the diversity of offerings.
Yeah, enhancing what's already there, enhancing the Gawler community in the town centre.
Yeah, and it is very mixed. It's not sort of homogenous in sections.
Yeah.
It'll be mixed throughout in a way which is complementary.
Fine grain. Okay, yeah. There's a few ideas there which all speak to like a really mixed use, diverse town centre. Yeah, thank you, Cody.
So I think the density in terms of making use of second floors and basements and all that sort of thing. Currently, there's a lot of, because if you look at the just empty shops, there's not many. But if you go to the shops and ask how many of them feel safe going up to their second floor without a hard hat, or that sort of thing, you'll find there's a lot of completely unused space in the main street, especially where sometimes you can go into Adelaide and you can have a cafe on the ground floor and a different business on the second floor, and I feel like there's been a lot of the time, well, it's due to heritage, but how we work around that and make sure there's more density there.
So that's the adaptive reuse of existing buildings and the using all of those buildings, getting more out of them.
Getting more out of the space that we have.
Yeah, getting more out of the space you have. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, great. Brian.
Yes, without a doubt, I believe that the biggest problem was going to loom with all of these fantastic ideas that you've mentioned, but the traffic is definitely the one that's going to be the major problem. And for many years, I've been suggesting that Murray Street be one way from Calton Road to Lindock Road with angle parking. That gives more parking, and also, as what Helen said, a safer street because of it like it is, and to keep all commercial traffic out. I mean, in the last few weeks, there's been that many trucks going up and down Murray Street, it's just ridiculous. And that's going to get worse because of the developments that are going on. And I still notice on the plan that you've got up there that there's no talk about doing anything about the park which is opposite on the other side of the river to the post office at the end of 8th Street, where 800 car parks have already been checked, they will fit there and so forth. Don't say it's a floodplain, because it's only a matter of if a flood's coming, you turn the key on and get the hell out of it. But traffic and parking is what I believe is the biggest problem that's going to be.
Sure, thank you. And I think traffic and parking, and also that idea of Murray Street as a one-way street, I mean, that's quite a clear idea, and we can debate the pros and cons of that, and that's definitely an idea that's come up. Who have we not heard from yet?
Thank you. Is this where I mentioned the canal? No. Maybe. No. Look, honestly, my two biggest would have to be agreeing with what Councillor Hennessy said in just regards to pedestrianising the main street, whether that's just reducing traffic and increasing foot traffic. So one-way, mall, wider footpaths, or actually just none of that, whatever the technical appropriate is, but yeah, making it that destination, that mall-type place where it's actually comfortable to sit and have a coffee on the street without a truck coming past, and there's shade, and you can... yeah, well, we've sort of got rid of the ambulances, which is good, maybe. Sorry, yeah, no, we haven't got rid of them. They shouldn't be coming down the main street as often. The second idea is, if I was to put one on the board, it is increased high-density residential, and that's actually people living within the town centre. For me, as sort of Councillor Davies said, there's a lot of opportunity there. And if that was, you're asking for my one big goal, if that's what it could be, people actually living in the town centre, that would be it.
That's a good one, because of course, people close by are going to bring that activity, and they're going to be spending in some of the businesses and really help to change or evolve or grow the vitality of the town centre into the future. That's fantastic. I think we've got some really good ones there, and a little bit of emphasis on a couple of things. So that's really, I think, helpful and ties in well with some of the other comments we've heard so far. Sure.
I did notice on the survey results that accommodation closer to the town centre was actually quite low on the priority list. Now, it'd be an interesting question on why that is. Like, to me, anecdotally, I'm sort of going, do they understand the economic benefits and the opportunities that arise with that focus, and how, you know, walking from your door actually reduces congestion, all those sorts of things? Question mark. It's just an interesting conversation to hopefully mature through our, working group. I think it would be interesting to understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there could be a follow-up question with the community, but there's also that education factor. I mean, I suspect a lot of the time people will comment on things they know about. So they know about driving and parking. They know about going to the shops. They might not be personally as interested in living in the town centre. It's not on their mind. It's not their top priority. But I think we should probe that a bit more.
Can I just add, I have had a couple of conversations with people. With 6 pubs in the main street, for some, it's actually not an attractive residential area.
Sure.
Because while we need this vibrancy and, for some, it's not going to be a quiet thing, sleeping above or very close to a pub that runs to midnight.
Yeah.
So it's not actually attractive to some. I think it's much more for your visitor, for your visitor accommodation possibly, maybe some other demographics, but for a lot of existing residents, no, being too close to the main centre is not actually very attractive.
That could be the case. Or maybe when you've got your hearing aids and you can turn them off at night, you're fine. But it could also be in the southern part of Murray Street, then perhaps there's some different opportunities, But no, it's a really good point, the amenity.
I don't know if we're going to come to this later on, so I don't want to... But can I talk to that now, or is it something... probably to add to, or probably give a slightly different perspective on that. I think, obviously, you want a good combination of both short and long-term accommodation, residential in the main street. I think you want to make... To me, there's probably a certain group of people who wouldn't find that attractive, and there's probably certain groups of people who would. Someone my age, I personally don't have as much of an issue with the sort of that noise and those things that might be happening in Murray Street. and there's people who potentially who don't want to drive as much, who would really value being near a train station. I think as well we've passive surveillance is an important thing, I think, and a big, read a lot of Jane Jacobs, but that to me, that's something which is currently missing a lot from the main street, is that passive surveillance that we have, or don't have in this case. I think that we just need to be careful as well with the offering of accommodation, that the way that we do it is quite intentional, and we're not promoting, to me, what individual short-term, in my view, promoting short-term individual accommodation, Airbnb style stuff, which can be quite limiting and has the potential to be quite price restrictive and actually force people out of the main street, and not prioritising that over everything else. But it does have a place there. And also, I wouldn't, at the same time as the Mayor said, economic development opportunities there are important, but we live in a beautiful town, but we probably shouldn't kid ourselves that if the only reason that someone is coming up this way is to go to the Gawler Main Street, they're probably not staying overnight. They're probably not going to be staying for a long period of time there. So I think having a more attractive main street is actually part of that economic development as well. And unless you actually get a main street which is attractive and somewhere where people can walk and wouldn't be driving anyway, then that would be more attractive. Whereas at the moment, you can go down to some much more beautiful accommodation. If you're bringing your car anyway, you might go there.
Sure.
So,
and
we
do actually. That's a good segue. We've got a couple of little questions coming up, which Stacey had been developing and had been using with the reference group as well. And Pat, you could do a little tally on this sheet here. So if you saw the reference group, there were a couple of little would you rather questions. So we're going to do a bit of a straw poll here. So we'll do this by show of hands. I think we've got 4 of these questions. So would you councillors rather larger scale shopping centre type development, and it could be an indoor mall, for example, or which could be really comfortable and easy to access and have all the latest stuff? Or would you rather more small independent shops? So we're not going to debate this, but just put your hand up if you'd prefer a larger scale shopping centre. Anyone? 0 votes from the councillors. And more small independent shops? That's unanimous. So we've got 7 for that. Well, that's very clear, so that's great. I don't know how we're going to get 16,000 square metres of it, so we'll have to come back to that. And then this is what we've just been talking about. Would you rather residential options near the town centre? Doesn't have to be that type of building, by the way. Or visitor or worker or short-term accommodation near the town centre. So perhaps so you have to choose here. You can't have both, so we're just going to get a little bit of a flavour. So who would put their hand up and say they'd rather have residential, permanent residential? We got 2. No, okay. 2 for residential accommodation, and then visitor or short stay. We have 4, and do you have a preference? Yeah, 5 for the visitor. Okay, so that's quite good. Well, sure. But we were kind of aiming towards priorities, aren't we? Like, what should we prioritise a little bit? And some sites are going to lend themselves to one more than the other. All right, and here's a bit of a different question, because would you rather see more development along the Adelaide Road precinct? The word intense may or may not be the right word, but would you like to see more happen down there? Or should we focus on changes to the kind of Murray Street precinct? So there's an interesting question. Would anyone put their hand up and say, actually, you'd like to see more attention paid to the Adelaide Road precinct? 1. And focus on Murray Street and the surrounds? That was 5. Are you no voting? Not voting. Abstain. Okay, that's all right. We're getting more sophisticated as we move into it. We've only got 1 more of these questions. And there you go, the last question. So we're getting into the detail here. Would you rather transform Murray Street into a pedestrian-friendly zone, wider footpaths, outdoor dining, lots of greenery, or keep Murray Street as a traffic route but add some more landscaping and parklets where we can? So this is a question about how far do we want to go with Murray Street. So one's transformational and one's more of a minor change, I would suggest. So could we have a show of hands for more of a transform Murray Street approach? We've got 5, 6, 7, okay. And then 0 for keeping Murray Street as more of a traffic route, but with some modifications. Okay, so we've got to increase the budget, Andrew, by 10 times, I think, for the transformation. Okay, that's good. It's a little bit of a straw poll there, but it could be something we do with the community later about sort of trade-offs, you know, we can ask people to work between things. All right, we've got a few more words on the screen now. We're doing okay. We've got 11 or 12 minutes, so we've got 2 more kind of questions to get through. So we as a team have been starting to workshop principles, you know. We like to have some principles that guide these plans to help with decision making, to help to communicate what we're doing to the community and to investors, etc. And in our workshopping so far, we came up with quite a lot of things, and I managed to bring them back to 12, which is way too many things to have as your principles. You can't be going in 12 directions at once. And probably, I think we should be going, there should be 4 to 6 principles typically, because more than that, you kind of lose track. I'll just tell you quickly what they are, and what I'm going to ask you to do after that, and maybe each of you, again, will have a chance to do this. I'd like to know, you know, maybe what your top priority principle would be, and then also one that maybe you would see right at the bottom, because it's the least important to you. So we'll see what comes of that. But living locally, first of all, is that concept in the regional plan. It's called other things. It's a planning concept talking about a mixed-use place where people can access a lot of the services and facilities and entertainments they need within walking distance, local to their area. So maybe Gawler Town Centre is already that, but maybe this could be a living locally case study of the future. Greener Gawler is a phrase we used in the growth framework for the whole town. So should whatever we do in the town centre make the place greener, physically and environmentally, sustainability, culturally even, or socially even. Vibrancy day and night maybe speaks to itself, or maybe it's day and evening. It's not, we're not saying 24-hour town here. Balance, so is that a principle? Is it because are we going to accept some trade-offs? Are we going to accept some impacts on heritage if we get certain other outcomes? Or are we going to leverage heritage as our most important asset and make everything revolve around that? Accessibility, connectivity, is that something that's got to be really important to this town centre, or are we already too accessible and that's why there's heaps of traffic in the main street? Uniquely Gawler, so that's talking about the character and the style and the form. Are we a forward-thinking town centre, or are we kind of looking into the past more so? You know, where do you stand on that? Community spirit and identity, the words might be a bit clunky, but maybe that's talking to a bit of the community character and values that already exist. Next one's a bit different. Should we be aiming for this town centre to be both a visitor destination and also potentially a hub for the region? Could this be a place, the town centre, where you are coming to the Barossa Valley from wherever you live in another city or country, but you stay in Gawler because either you choose to or that was the best option available to you and you come across Gawler as well? Or should you be coming to Gawler for a day trip to enjoy the town centre or to see some sort of attraction here? Is visitation going to be one of the principles? Or is it more about events? Should this plan be about making event spaces for the community of Gawler? And then last but not least, is Gawler Town Centre the heart of this region? Is this the main town centre in this region of 100,000 plus people? And does everyone know that when they live here in the region or they come here, they automatically know Gawler is the centre, it's not some big shopping centre out somewhere in nowhere? Is that got to be driving this town centre plan? So there are your choices, if you like. There's a bit of variety there, and you know, they may not be all quite correct either, but be very, very keen to hear your thoughts on these, and particularly tell us one that's really important to you and tell us one that you don't think should be a principle, if you can. Again, who'd like to go first? Please.
So I'm to choose one.
Choose one that you think is top priority,
Okay.
and should definitely be a principle, and then choose one that you don't think should be a principle.
Okay, so heart of the region for me is a no-brainer. One that I don't believe. Well, I'd say. What was balance again? Sorry.
Well, it's really just going to be a compromise, balancing one thing against another, and it's sort of finding a middle ground. But maybe that's just a nothing principle. Maybe that's a principle for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't give you a low. I'll probably just give you feedback on uniquely Gawler and leveraging heritage. I think they're a top priority, but they're the same realistically because
Okay.
uniquely Gawler is.
We can draw a line
heritage.
between them. We can
Essence.
word it up. Okay.
Yeah, but heart of a region, I'll lock that one.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Cody?
Yeah, so I guess mine, I would say, community spirit and identity, which I was also potentially going to merge with uniquely Gawler, but, potentially.
Could be.
Potentially that's a 3 in 1. And then for the one I'd take out, maybe event spaces. It's, not that event spaces aren't good, but it's not, I don't think we have necessarily if we're looking for what to put new stuff in the town, in our main street of 6 pubs and big civic centre and all that sort of thing, I wouldn't necessarily be
That's
looking
fine.
for new event
That might be
spaces.
not the natural advantage of the town centre as the events sort of space priority. Who'd like to go next? Hi.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, well, no, I'm going to, actually, on that comment, I'm just thinking because the river corridor is in, maybe that's part of the event space, Goose Island. Anyway, I'm going to take out visitor destination hub because I think we miss that. I don't think that's actually a driving philosophy. Visitors come when we do things like leverage heritage, community spirit and uniquely Gawler and heart of the region. People are coming because there's already things here that they want, medical, allied health, family, whatever. Continuing to label ourselves as the gateway to the Barossa, come and stay in Gawler and then go to the Barossa, is really silly. People don't do it anymore. They go zimming past on the expressway. So I actually think that's a bit of a outdated and just keeps, but we keep doing things like come to Gawler to shop. No, people aren't coming to Gawler as opposed to Norwood Parade or Adelaide City Mall. They're coming for a range of things. Shopping might be one of them, but it's not the only thing. So I've got some problems with that.
And what's your top priority that you really do like?
I'm like the Mayor, I'm heart of the region.
Okay.
When you look at the reason we have such a variety of services, commercial, medical, whatever, it's because we service a large, from the York Peninsula, mid-north, around, and have always, and I think that's one of the focuses we really need to look at.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm thinking more on forward thinking, to the truth. So we try to look at that linking into leveraging the heritage, the greener Gawler, the heart of the region is taken all combining. Unless I'm understanding what we're looking at forward thinking there, you might explain that to me a little bit more, but I'm looking at it as where we are, where we want to be, bringing everything in together. So.
Yeah, and I think forward thinking, what we meant there was you're not too constrained by the past, so you're looking for new land uses, you're looking for even new designs of buildings or public spaces, you're looking for new activities. Doesn't mean you don't respect the past, but if you're forward thinking, then maybe you're not completely influenced by what's happened before.
So yeah, I'll stick with that. Thanks.
And one to drop off the list, a balloon to burst, if you like.
I'm sort of probably leaning towards the event spaces as well.
Okay.
And everything that we want to create and have more events in the places, but having particular spaces for that, I don't think's what we've got the
That's
capability
great.
of doing. So, yeah.
Thank you. Who's still to share a view? Brian, yeah.
Certainly the heart of the region and uniquely Gawler and living locally, that's most important. We must never forget the people that are here and why they came here. We have a very elderly population in our town, so therefore transport and everything has to get better than what it is now. I know many people, older people that have handed in their licence because they're shit scared to drive around Gawler because it's that bad. Accessibility for all, without a doubt. Green and Gawler's a wasted space. The horses are already bolted. The houses are so close together that their bathrooms are right next to each other. So where do you put the tree? Because they don't want to cover up their solar panels. That's
Well, we're just talking about the town centre, but you're maybe not so keen on the green or Gawler principle in the town centre?
No. And the same with the leverage heritage. We've got to loosen up on that. We've got a lot of older buildings and everything, but I have never, in 83 years, heard somebody said, I came to Gawler just to see the heritage. Oh, come and see the walls that are falling down and all that. And the last one, community spirit. Gawler's the best of town and country.
Okay, thank you. So taking Heart of the Region as your top and maybe Green or Gawler as the bottom there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm probably going to actually disagree with Councillor Hennessy, and if we're looking at the town centre, visitor destination hub for me should be the driving principle. I don't disagree about our services, but to me, they're not in the town centre. So your doctors, your car dealers, your supermarkets, etc., that people come from the region, that's not the town centre. Like, I'm thinking the Mount Gambier model, those big regional centres. Your town centre is truly a destination or a hub for locals and visitors alike, and your services are in the suburbs. And right now, I think one of our big problems is our services, and yep, Steinborn is one of them, is in our main street, and that, to me, is actually where I think we need to flip the picture, and we need to really think about what goes in our town centre versus what goes in our suburbs, let's call them. So that's my number one, and event spaces. Absolutely, I think one of the top things we actually need in this town, but I don't know if that should be a driving force for our town centre. I think we've got heaps of opportunity for outside the town centre.
Thank you.
Just while I've got the mic, sorry, I'm going to ask you a question. Adelaide Road, holistically, how do you see that precinct within this model? And is that different? Because it's great that this has been investigated with Adelaide Road, but I think probably in all of our heads, Adelaide Road versus Murray Street are two very different precincts. And I'm quite curious, like before when we talked about residential versus short-term accommodation, like if I'm thinking Adelaide Road versus Murray Street, they're two different precincts. So even like event spaces, Murray Street, but all of these, I'm having a bit of a hard time to actually look at them as one holistic picture, which might be my problem.
Sure.
But I'd just love to know what your kind of high-level view is from Adelaide Road and the, I guess, similarities and differences with Murray Street. Sorry to turn this around.
View so far. So I think it can be a different land use mix, but it could still provide that function for commercial space, retail space, community services. And I think we've got to remember that there's lots of different types of businesses and business owners and property owners. We can't have everything concentrated in the heritage core and a handful of large sites owned by large property owners. You do want to have that small and medium-sized properties and businesses as well. So we're looking at it as a part of the where can we accommodate that future commercial mixed-use land use. I would expect the character would be quite different to Murray Street and surrounds, and that's okay. I think they can be different. Yeah. Have we got one more to hear from, and we're going to run out of time in a couple of minutes? It was no to event spaces, wasn't it? Yeah, thank you. Visitor was top, yeah.
So I'm aware of the time, but also this is something which we could probably all talk about for 3 hours because it is a really important topic, and I'm sure we will do that at some point. But how the region agree largely there. It's I think whether you talk about the vision that Ethan just mentioned or the one that Helen mentioned, it's quite, I think there's no doubt that this will be a central place for people to come and distinct from the Barossa, because not everyone's coming up this way just to drink wine, so and have that tourism aspect. Forward thinking, so I'll disagree I think that's a nothing bubble, because to me obviously you want to move forward, but forward to what? So I think while there's probably some, and I appreciate Mick's idea about that, because I think he managed to articulate a really clear vision of where we want to move forward to, But just in the way that Mick explained that, then it was completely different to how I thought about it, which I think exemplifies that you know, if you put that out there, then people are just going to take their own interpretation of it and have no real clear idea of what's going on. Community spirit and identity, I think that plays into the heritage and uniquely Gawler. It's about people's connection with place, to me, and the connection of people who are local as well to that place, and that is Murray Street. Also, living locally, you don't just want a tourist destination where you've got tourists coming in and out. We don't want it to be that transient. You have to have something that is uniquely Gawler, and the way that you do that is have Gawler people using that space.
Okay, thank you. You've really helped us to prioritise and link a few together. So we started with 12 and we need to get rid of at least half of them. So I think we're going to do that by merging them and dropping a few off. So that's really good. We're just going to wrap up in the next minute or two. I've got one other question. We won't fully debate this, but I just wanted to tell you, we're going to look at least kind of 3 scenarios where we try to, you know, locate things and size things and model things. And I mean things like future buildings and this retail space, and where would the residential accommodation go, or the visitor accommodation. It's often a bit hard to kind of describe in advance what these are going to be like, but I've tried to have a bit of a go at it. But we're not going to do 7 scenarios, okay, because it would be too complicated and confusing. We probably will have something that's the do nothing or do little, you know, so what if there wasn't much change here? We'll probably just demonstrate that the 16,000 square metres will go to some other location, and that'll be a major competitor to your existing retail, so we'll talk about that. But we want to pick maybe 3 scenarios to work on in a bit more detail. So one of them could be really heritage sensitive. One of them could actually be more focused on the river corridor as the future growth spatial location rather than, you know, the streets. One of them could be, number 4, much more about those targeted sites, the strategic sites, which might be more developable. That's probably one of the sensible kind of scenarios. There is one around being much more regenerative and greener and giving something back to the community and the environment. That could be linked into other options. Number 6, transport-oriented development. This is really saying, well, actually, let's focus on 2 or 3 really big sites and imagine if they were like really big redevelopments and then all the other land didn't change too much. What would that look like? Would it even happen? And number 7 there, should we have a big, bold town centre plan where we have bigger buildings, we knock more things down, we're more aggressive, and we don't necessarily want to model that if you are, for example, not keen on, you know, even seeing what that looks like. So, you know, I'm happy for you to rule 1 or 2 things out so that we don't have to, you know, spend a lot of time in detail doing that. I guess we don't have much time here, but a couple of quick comments would be fine. If anyone feels strongly about the scenario ideas.
Take 7 out.
Everyone kind of concur with that?
And I think you could almost link 3 and 5 together. The River Town corridor and the regenerative.
Yeah.
I think we've talked many times over decades about the businesses that face onto Julian Terrace, and we've not got much traction on that. But I think that there's a huge amount of potential there. And then, you know, businesses that face out onto the park, Apex Park and the rest. I think that's a real missed opportunity.
So that's a good one to test. Yeah. Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, I think we can knock out 1 and do nothing. Gets us nowhere. I think we do need to be focused on what we're doing and how we're going to move forward. To Isaac's point earlier, heritage sensitive. And to be honest, I'm probably going to respectfully disagree a little bit with Councillor Hennessy, just purely because heritage sensitive and big and bold Gawler, if done right, can be done really well. You can actually use High Street and the Murray Street to have a really cool build form that's to scale, but single-storey entrance from High Street, but double-storey on the main street, if thought about, and the right sites were picked. And I don't necessarily think that on our main street, if we're strategic enough, that means knocking down heritage in Gawler. I think there's some adaptive reuse. If you think outside of the square, we're sitting in an adaptive reuse 2 buildings currently right now that's really tastefully done, that is modern day development and big and bold. So I think heritage sensitive and big and bold can actually parallel if done right. There isn't one or the other. Yeah, and the knockdown. That's the bit that I think is a loaded question, because there is sensitivity around heritage, and I don't think it's one or the other if done right. Regenerative green and enhancement. Again, if we're talking about like proper development, we're actually looking through the lens of our strategic plans that we've already got, climate emergency and the like, on how we're going to adapt renewables, greening and the like. If we're going to be serious about linking to our other strategies, that plays into it already. And organically transport-oriented development plays into some of our other strategies if we're linking them all together. So my long-winded way of saying you've got 7 points there, tweak the wording, I think you can easily get them down to 3, but you'll capture the good bits of all 7.
Sure.
Except for 1, sorry.
I think that, and maybe just for one, the base case might be useful if you in the future have to do some kind of business case modelling. Like, here's what would happen if we didn't do this. So it'd be useful for us at least just to show what almost nothing would deliver from a land use point of view. But that's the only reason we were going to include it. Brian, quick word?
Yeah, certainly number 3, if we're going to have all these buildings and all this accommodation and everything, the whole lot, we've got a magnificent river coming down here. That river has got such a history to it, if you look back through the history books of it. And it's got an unconditional, flowing underground stream that runs all the way down. We used to have weirs along there. And if that was put weirs like Strathalbyn has, for anybody that's been to Strathalbyn, that would be a pristine viewing of walking trails. We've got walking trails along there and everything, the whole lot. That is one area that we've just forgotten about all the way down the line. And humpback weirs are so easy to maintain in the case of a flood or after a flood. And the other one is number 6, the transport-orientated development. We must make sure, a bit like a building we've just had built here, should have had a car park underneath. We didn't do that, and things like that. We mustn't make those mistakes again, and we have.
Thank you.
All right. Quick, sorry, can I just very quickly
sure.
say something? I think sensitive is the wrong word there, because I think it's like, oh, don't touch it. What it really should be is you want it to be complementary of the heritage, and I'm not sure the word to do that now, but you want it to be aesthetically distinct and unique and in keeping with the character. Sensitive, I don't think is the right word. Big and bold, Gawler. There, I'm glad that Nathan has a probably different view to what a Michael Higginbotham might have of what that actually means. But once again, I think those are buzzwords that don't actually capture what you actually, like what we're actually trying to do with that. Because big and bold, I mean, I think the description there is probably a more apt description of what is intended by that than the actual wording, because big and bold doesn't really mean anything. And there's a lot of people who fear that as being demolish everything, and some people who see that as free rein to do whatever we want.
Fantastic. I told you it was difficult to name these things, so we've got a bit of work to do. Just our next steps, we've got to complete our investigations. I'm sure the information there will be shared with you. The early community engagement is also close to being completed. Then there's some work to do on this scenario development and on the transport concepts. And it's early 2026 before we'll have our first version of them. I'm not sure we've got a next workshop scheduled with you yet, but I look forward to that when it happens. So thanks very much for your time this evening, councillors. Really appreciate it. It was great input. Thank you. Thanks. Sorry for running over time slightly.
All right, so we'll just stop for 5 minutes. Back at 1:15. Thank you.
Welcome everybody. I'd like to bring you all back in if we could so we can get underway for the EcoDev briefing. Come and join, Kevin. So members, you would have received information in the communique last Thursday regarding what we're talking about tonight at this briefing session. But before I kick this off, I'd like to welcome Suman Sethi to the Town of Gawler organisation, joined with us 27th of October. For those who haven't met Suman, who are in the room right now, He's our Economic Development Officer. So moving beyond tonight, Suman will be taking carriage of all this strategy work in the future. So welcome, Suman. We didn't chuck him in the deep end and say, go Yardas and present. But with some interim structure stuff as well, Suman reporting to Bryce, manages strategy, who's now going to be reporting to Andrew under the interim structure, with Wendy leaving as I've taken on infrastructure and operations temporarily through this interim stuff. So after tonight, Kirsty's phasing out of economic development as well, but focusing on tourism and running the VIC and also our external grants portfolio. So a bit of change and a bit of context for all the members. That's why we're staff heavy, because tonight is a change overnight, essentially, where Kirsty, Bryce and I have been working with the working group. We've got Kevin Fisher from Business Scholar, we've got Jen and Laura from RDA Barossa Gawler Adelaide Plains here. Members of those groups have been part of this working group, internal working group, to develop the strategy. So Kirsty, Bryce, myself, those guys and Chris, our CEO. Beyond here, we're passing it over to the strategy team to be headed up by Suman, supported by Bryce and Andrew. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Today's purpose is to run through what the working group has done. You've all seen the information through the communique, and we just want to pick your brains as to whether you think anything needs adapting, changing. People are taking lots of notes, and we'll be refreshing the strategy beyond that point, coming back to council for a December council meeting report to confirm the content from tonight and work through next steps, which we'll talk about at the very end of the presentation. So first of all, we've come up with a vision of the working group for our economic development strategy, and it's there on screen. This is the opportunity for members to feedback. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you want to change it? Thoughts?
Sure, I'll give some thoughts.
Yep.
No, I was going to. I think the word prosperity is good. I think it's a while it's a broad term, I do think it encapsulates what it needs to and doesn't restrict things in a way which is purely about perhaps revenue for particular sections of the business sector and takes away from the community aspect as well. So I think that's good. Progressive, of course, is a good word to have in there, because you don't just want to be stock standard, you want to be thinking about innovation and those things. I think it encapsulates that well also. But I think the balance between growth and prosperity there is quite an important one. And I think that they both they both challenge each other in some ways, and I think that's an important balance. So I like it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I'll go something slightly off key. I'd just make it driving regional prosperity. I love the Progressive Economic Centre, and driving regional prosperity just again centres us, as we were discussing, that we really are the heartland of the region. I think driving growth is just a bit meaningless and perhaps a bit sensitive at this time, where we face some problems from that. I think it's referring to economic growth, but I think it's just a bit wibbly wobbly. So I'd just make it straight driving regional prosperity.
I'll agree with Councillor Hennessy. I think Progressive Economic Centre covers that. Regional prosperity is our outcome. I also just want to mention I like that we're recognised. It's a measure. And it is not therefore that we're going to strive to be, or we're going to champion, or we're going to push. We're actually going to be recognised. So this vision kind of has an end goal in mind, and it's not just an internal, we did it, we need to be recognised, which means people actually, bums on seats for lack of a better analogy. So no, it's great.
Thank you.
I agree with Councillor Hennessy as well. Basically, if we remove the growth out of it, I think you pretty well sum it up, get a little bit more sharper, and I think you got pretty well there. So
Beautiful. Brian, any thoughts?
No, it still means it's the best of town, country, regional South Australia. Nothing about South Australia.
Love it.
It could be Gawler in Tasmania. It could be South Australia.
Yep, thank you, Brian. Beautiful. All right, we'll move on to the next part, which is the pillars, and there are 4. I'll bring them onto screen all as we go. But the first one being precinct activation, then investment attraction, then we have visitor economy, and then we have thriving business. They are the 4 pillars. We did have, I'm going to get it wrong, I think it was 6 last time in the former ED strategy, and the group consolidated a few and discarded a few that were a bit, we didn't even know what they meant, sort of thing. And so if we don't really understand it ourselves from a staffing perspective, to deliver on them is very difficult. We think that we've consolidated them quite well into 4, but we'd love to have your feedback on this.
I like the 4. I think it's sharp and focused as they seem to flow through as I was reading through them. I particularly like then that they go into the next section, the indicative actions. I think that flow is really clever. I could see very clearly how they all fitted together. So I like what you've done.
Thank you. Yes, Brian?
One of the things that I noticed in today's paper, there's another new shopping centre opening up at Gawler Bill. And at the boundaries business, we still don't know what the boundary situation is. And we're being told that Gawler Belt's out there, but it's not Gawler Belt, it's Light Council and so forth. I think we've got to get things shaped up as to where we are and what's happening. And like I say, the shopping centre in the paper today was one thing, and you know, the millions of dollars being spent that are going to be spent on the new Roseworthy shopping centre, which is supposed to be a state-of-the-art thing. So we need to know, and our development officer needs to know, if we're going to encourage more people to come in to fill our empty shops, like the Homemaker Centre and places like that that are completely empty. So there's a fair bit of work to do to get those shops full. We don't want empty shops in this town. And that's such an important thing. I believe that we've got this boundary business is just hanging around like an old smell. We need to know exactly what is Gawler's boundaries. Where can people, maybe when they come and say that they want to, you know, they've got $1 million, they want to spend it on another new shopping complex on Adelaide Road or somewhere like that. So I think there's a few things we don't know, and we need to get our facts right. And when you see Gawler Belt, and you know that it's not Gawler, you know, it's not right.
So I can clarify just very quickly on the boundaries thing. Gawler Belt will remain part of Light Regional Council. There is no change to that. So Gawler Belt, the suburb area, stays within Light Regional Council. That's a decision that's been made, a recommendation from the Boundaries Commission. Concordia and Hewett are the same. So the Boundaries Commission recommendation said they're not coming across. The Minister's yet to gazette that, but it is in keeping with the Minister's directions from the original. So the only areas that are potentially going to change with the Minister's gazettal are Reed, Hillier and Evanston Park changes for Gawler, and then Ullaberry and Biberinga tiny bits going over to Playford. So tiny bit of Cowbeeba, which is a tiny bit of the Springwood development area, is coming into Gawler, as long as the Minister gazettes it. So we're waiting for that, but Gawler Belt was never really on the cards for us. So what's happening on there is Light Regional Council, but 100% agree with the sentiment around activating our existing commercial precincts and increasing the occupancy. The session we just had is largely about that for the town centre. This strategy is about the whole of council area. So we definitely need to look at that in our southern areas. So thank you, Brian. Mick?
Yeah, thanks. If you'd be looking at reducing the pillars, I would combine 3 and 4 together. Basically, drop the visitor, drop the business, just have the thrive in economy. If we're looking at the reductions of it, because then that should lead into the next side and they will branch out from that. But that's just my thoughts on it. I'm trying to simplify it a little bit more.
Yep. We'll work through that because our thought process, and I'll precursor what we're coming to next, was to create that visitor as a separate section, because we have merged the tourism plan into the economic development strategy as well. So we're discarding that plan. And we wanted to be very clear on the support that we provide to our existing and new businesses as a pillar itself, so that we're not muddying those waters. So that's why we have them separated, but yeah, certainly something to think about. So thank you. Isaac, yep.
I think happy with these and agree with what Councillor Hennessy said before, but just already seeing some things I'd be cautious of. I think that they're all really good. Precinct activation, though, just being careful that when we're communicating some of these ideas to the broader community or the business sector, that we're using appropriate language.
Yep.
I think I always used to make I'm desensitised to it now, but I always used to make the tongue-in-cheek joke when I was in the YAC. I think that, we find outcome-driven solutions to activate the precinct or something like that as a, example of a meaningless local government phrase.
Yep.
So I think that, that as long as we're communicating, to us it means something, but as long as we're communicating that in a way which translates to businesses, potential investors, but also very separately translates to a community,
yep.
I think that's effective.
Thank you, that's good feedback, and that will be part of the body content of the document, explanations of what terminology means. So, yep, excellent. Any other thoughts on the pillars before we move to the objectives, etc.? No, beautiful. So starting at number 1, which is the precinct activation, the objective that the group has come up with is on screen, energise places and communities to be vibrant, dynamic and economically productive precincts. Thoughts on just that objective statement, which covers across the next few slides as well. But to start with just that.
I liked it because I took it away from Murray Street and thought about some of the other shopping precincts. So, for example, I thought, does that apply to Paxton Street and what we've got down there? And it does. It makes sense. So I like it as an objective because I don't think it's specific to one particular shopping area in Gawler. So, yeah.
Yep. Beautiful. Any others? Always bring it in as we go through because it will remain on screen for a few more slides. So within this objective, we have a number of strategies, but the first focus area in that is placemaking with these ones on it. Oops, one too far, sorry. So focus area of placemaking to deliver on that objective, and we have 3 strategies under placemaking.
Sorry, there's silence.
No, that's okay.
Again, just think about it in terms of Paxton Street. We can do all 3 of those things with Paxton Street as an example, which is, again, while it's rigorous enough to adapt to whichever part of the town we're again, there's a perception we've always focused on Murray Street, and I think that's unfair, and I think these are rigorous enough to be able to use elsewhere.
Thank you. Yes, Mick?
Just clarify on point 2 there.
Yep.
Celebrate the local precinct identity and heritage.
Yep.
How does that represent, as we're saying, into Paxton Street?
So the intent of this around those precincts, and we need to work out what those precincts are, that's a body of work to be done, but an example of Paxton Street, what is that precinct's identity? And it's more around that manufacturing and industrial perspective, and what is its heritage? How long's it been doing that? What's informed that? How's it worked? How does Elliott Goodger Reserve fit into that? Because, the industry that was in that space before it became a reserve is part of that precinct's identity. And you can get that out of new precincts and old precincts. So when we're talking about new precincts in Cuddler that are going to come through the local investigation area and Great Adelaide Regional Plan, they will have their own identity and heritage built from the ground up, but also celebrating what was there before. Does that make sense, Mick?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just want to celebrate.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Haven't got an alternative to celebrate, so for now it's okay. Yep. Yep, no worries. Excellent. Any other thoughts? Blanks, beautiful. We'll move on. Next, we have under the same precinct activation pillar to diversify our economic activity as the focus area. And apologies, I can never remember, we've got 3 or 4, it's 3s at the moment. So we do have the 3 strategies underneath that diversification. Again, keen to hear your thoughts on this in a global sense. Thank you, Helen.
How do you know? Again, this is linking back to what we've just talked about, facilitate the night economy. For those of us been here for a fair while, remember that when we have had past problems with night economy. So immediately, in my notes, I've just put in brackets safe.
Yep.
There had to be a lot of work done with our hotel owners when we got into a really bad situation. So it's finding that balance and reassuring people that it will be a safe night economy.
Yep.
I think you'd probably leave it there, but that was my really quick reaction.
And it was certainly something we talked about at the working group.
Excellent.
Around ensuring that the action underneath is around that safer nighttime activity.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And Councillor
Yep.
Solomon talked, about passive surveillance, great
Yes.
term. So I think we just need to be mindful that
Yep.
that's still in a lot of people's memory where we got ourselves to and how we had to dig ourselves out of that situation.
Thank you. Brian?
The one-to-one facilitate opportunities for new businesses. There's a huge area of land opposite Clonley Park. Is there any indication as to what is going to happen with that area?
So that area is currently code amendment. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. We are going to have a report to council for this month, is it, on that code amendment, the one opposite Clonley, noting it. I think it's coming up to November meeting. So yes, there's actually a private developer looking at changing the use of that land. From my understanding, it's residential accommodation on the main aspect on Murray Road. So that has been presented to council a few weeks ago or last month at the council meeting and through communiques, but there's another report coming in November, Brian, about that space. Yep. Yep. Yes, Isaac, and then Cody, one of you was before the other.
All right. So is the idea for all of these to apply to every precinct?
Over the entire council area, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I'm just,
Sorry, I'll be clearer. So with facilitate night economy, for us at the moment, the drive is around the main town centre area as the best location for night economy. There are night economy activities that we want to support in other areas, but they won't be the focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm just, because if I substituted Murray Street and put in the Evanston Homemaker Centre or whatever.
Probably not wanting night economy there. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm with you. Yeah.
I think that night economy, how we look at it, I think that needs some work as well, because I think at the moment when we're talking about night economy, we're all thinking about the exchange and we're thinking about, people who are, what's the word, drunk, that's the best word to use in this setting, but, making their way down the street, destroying things, that's probably what we're thinking. But I think that, for example, we've had conversations about restaurants before, sort of even late evening, I think is important, and I would see that as part of the night economy. I was talking to someone the other day that if you're, if you're in your 50s, 60s, and you want, or 40s even, you want to go somewhere, have a drink, in a nice sort of bar, which is very distinct from the offerings that we currently have on Murray Street. It's a completely different clientele, and it's a completely different type of offering that we currently don't have. To me, that's also part of that night economy there as well. So I think defining what night economy looks like is going to be an important part of that, because I think, as Helen said before, it does have some quite negative connotations, and people do feel quite unsafe because they think it just would mean enhancing, having, nightclubs or things going on. But really love the mixed use stuff as well. Once again, I think that's quite important because you want to have a diversity within any given catchment, which actually I think speaks to the way that people go about their day, rather than just lumping things in a way that looks logical on paper, and not having to travel from one end of town to another to do two tasks that make absolute sense to do in unison with one another.
Yeah. Just before we get to you, Ethan, with that night economy piece, there are segments of night economy as well, and entertainment is one of those segments, and that's more of what we're talking about with the Murray Street area. There are other night economy activities. Gawler Health Service is an example, 24/7 hospital. It's operating at night. There's economic activity occurring at that precinct at night. You've got deliveries coming into town at night, during the night, arrivals, departures, all those sorts of things. So we need to definitely be clear on what we're talking about for the various precincts about night economy, and that'll be the explanation work that Suman and team will be working through to define. We are talking about entertainment economy in the town centre. We are talking about not in Gawler, but an example could be overnight truck yards or something somewhere else. It's still night economy activity because it's economic activity at night. So just be conscious of, it's a very global term and we need to define what it is that we're talking about. So, yep. Ethan?
Thanks, David. Thanks, Councillor Solomon, for describing my last Friday night too. No, night economy is good, and another thing that just popped into my head, you know, even like potentially state government's rollout of 24/7 chemists,
Yep.
you know, like that is something we want to be receptive to, I think, and how that fits within our town. I just wanted to say, having a strategy that specifically states about we are keen on mixed-use development, like that is our core priority. One of our core priorities when we're talking about diversifying economic activity is hugely important, and I think this is what council adopts, I think sends a really strong message to developers that no, we actually don't want the one-off things that don't make sense. It's actually, we're looking at this from a holistic point of view, which ties into living locally, which ties into active transport, yada, yada, yada. It's how can we actually, like Councillor Solomon said, if we're looking at developing a parcel of land, we're actually looking at our neighbours and the neighbours' neighbours and the neighbours' neighbours' neighbours, because it's like, how is this going to fit into the broader picture? So for me, that's a huge shift, I think, in where we've been in the past, and an important one.
Yep. Beautiful. We'll keep moving on to the next one, which is objective 2. So we'll just go back to the actual objective. So this is under investment attraction, and their objective is positioning Gawler as the place for new businesses, industries and investment. Thoughts? And I must admit, at the working group, we did struggle with the first bit of that. What is it? Place? Is it hub? Is it region? Is it... We landed on place as the location for sort of thing. So that was the thinking behind that, but open for wordsmithing and feedback.
And does this include the part of that of where the businesses are, or investment in specific areas, or is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Happy to keep mulling because it is part of this whole pillar. So bring some context in for the focus areas. Is that investment, attraction, tools and strategy? No, we have 3 again. So they're on screen again about attracting new investment into Gawler.
There's a little, I don't quite know how to articulate it. So we're talking about new and incoming, but we also value the businesses that have been here a long time.
And that sits in, from our perspective, that thriving business
Okay.
pillar.
So long as we're picking it up then,
Yep.
because I think there's a balance here,
Yep.
and people do support long-term businesses.
100%.
And we hope these newcomers will stay for generations,
Correct.
type thing. Thanks.
Yep. Yes.
This probably relates to the whole pillar or several objectives. Yes, I'm just trying to look at them on my phone now. It's been difficult, but I couldn't remember them off the top of my head. But just I think that there's that strategic investment, but also the infrastructure, which is probably the next point I think is quite important. We've got as well, and I know I keep harping on about it, but the industrial investigation area out in Hillier at the moment. I think we can have a good proposition for that area, which is attractive to businesses, But I think we need to be we need to have some strategic thinking around that and need to have some focus on it. We need to provide state government with a solution about what that actually looks like. And I think that is a real opportunity for working and living locally if we do that right. So I think that kind of, when we're thinking about strategic investment as well, we are thinking about, and I think it ties into the next point, but the employment opportunities which come from that, which build prosperity in the region and promote that living locally, which ties into our broader community plan. I would put the industrial investigation area in Hillier as a major part of that, but there's also other precincts that we're going to have pop up as well. I don't think we can just focus on the Cudler precinct. I think that's going to be important, but I don't think we can just focus on having another Main Street precinct. We need to be thinking about other employment opportunities, other uses, other things other than retail, where people can seek meaningful employment. So, to me, that's a big part of this entire objective here and this pillar.
Yep, thank you. Yes, Mick?
Thank you. I think point two, the streamline investment pathways is really important and quite critical at getting that messaging out there and across to anyone that's coming into Gawler to know that there is actually, well, a pathway for them to get through and then they'll have the support to move in there. Obviously, we've had a few issues with businesses trying to come in and say it's too hard to deal with sort of thing. Some have been successful in navigating it, but really adapting that pathway to make it clear and that they got the support of the town of Gawler is, I find that's very important. So I like that a lot.
Thank you. Yes, Brian?
I think one of the things that I pick out of that there, that if you're a new business person, you want to come to the town, and I heard Councillor Hennessy say about the point of the industrial area in Paxton Street and down around there, and I'm going to have a meeting or drive around with Richard. The big thing that I've spoken, the amount of semi-trailers that are now using that as depots down there, like there's 1,000 cars, Stonewater told me the other day, there's 1,000 cars a week come from interstate. I don't know whether you've seen them, but they come in on these great big semi-trailers and that, they're buying them and then the dealers buy them, and that's an agency. Now they're huge, and they come in, they go there. Now when they want to go out, there's only one way out, and that's up onto the main road, up around the roundabout, and out they go. And we know that the railway line is going to go to Roseworthy, for sure. Nothing's happened yet. Now, there's at the end of Gawler River Road, the railway line is, and then it goes to Patterson Road, which leads you then down and out to the freeway. If we get in early and say, well, rightio, that's going to be a railway crossing. No different to Barnett Road. It'll be the same sort of thing because it'll be the train coming from Roseworthy going into Adelaide. And like I say, I'll take Richard out. I was out the other day with a couple of people that have said, this is a nightmare. We can come in here, but then when you've got to get out, you only have one way. So for other people to get and have more businesses build in that area, there's got to be better reaction with, and again, it comes back to traffic flow. And Gawler is becoming a bottleneck now, more so than ever before. So, where to, if you want to have a business where you need a truck and stuff like that, you need to have easy access in and out to your daily jobs or whatever you do. So I think we've got to look very carefully at that area, especially the Williston industrial area.
Certainly, in terms of where businesses should be located, that's certainly part of this work around our proposition and investment prospectus, which is an action we'll get to shortly. It's identifying what those locations are for the types of businesses that suit those locations. With the current limitations around Paxton Street, is that the best location for a large yard that requires semis coming on a daily basis? Probably not. Is there a better opportunity for that somewhere in one of the other growth areas, down in our southern areas, where there's more accessible main thoroughfares? So that's a conversation around what is the right location for the right business, which the prospectus work, which is one of the actions talks to. So thank you, Brian. Any other thoughts at this point? We'll keep moving to 2.2, targeted industry investment, and this is exactly the point I was talking about. And we've only got 2 strategies underneath this one. So it's attracting those industries matched to those lands, so appropriate locations for the right industry, and looking at startups with high growth.
Ties into what I was saying before, but almost perfectly.
I really like 2.2.2. I'm just very conscious, a lot of that relies on the value of the properties and how much they're worth.
Oh, for sure.
So I think it's great, but that's why we have the best people on it to actually work out an action plan on how we're going to do that. But I think that's good because, again, it shows to our community that we're actually being strategic in regards to this land will be good for this industry, but also we want to support small business, we want to support startups. We're not just going to be, of course we'll take an Audi or a Coles if it's strategic, but we're not just going to sell out to the highest bidder per se. So, no, that's cool.
Thank you. Brian?
I know it may not even fit here, but on Paxton Street, there's 2 problems, Paxton Street and Kelly Road. And that is, it's a fantastic thing for young people. There's a dance studio on Paxton Street. And it's a nightmare for traffic. Everybody's got to park and things like that. And on Kelly Road, there's a cheer group who have leased a factory there. When it comes to the point of who can lease a factory to have what in an area, is there stipulations that say, well, you've got to be mechanical or, whatever, but here we have, a lot of children and young people being involved in something in the middle of a
Industrial area.
Area.
So from a development perspective, the usage must be along the lines of the land use classification for the area. So if it is industrial, it should be industrial. However, there's obviously commercial arrangements between a landowner and a tenant. Whether those locations are the best for those activities may not be, but it might be the only location that those activities can currently find and or afford. So you've got to look at that relationship as well. But certainly around 2.2.1, matching the right things with the right areas will go a long way to solve that. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Moving on to visitor economy, Pillar 3. So the objective here is leveraging tourism as a catalyst for economic growth.
Keep going, this one's exciting.
We'll bring them all out for you then. Marketing. And we have 3 again.
Okay, 3.1.2. I have some reservations that with a hub to explore the whole of South Australia. I think I would think it would be more sensible to talk about our region rather than the whole of South Australia. I'm not sure whether if you're heading for Cooper Pedy, you're going to stay in Gawler.
Yep.
And I don't even think that if you're in Gawler, you'd be necessarily looking for information about Cooper Pedy. Well, you'd be doing it online, or you'd have done some pre-planning or whatever.
Yep.
But I think the fact that we've talked a lot tonight in both sessions about being a regional centre, the heartland of our region, I would put a bit in to explore our region in there.
Yep, sure. Thank you. Certainly was a topic of discussion at the group, and the region would work on what we define as our region, I think, in this context, because part of our discussion is you could actually base yourself in Gawler and be very well connected to the CBD of Adelaide.
So we could say region and beyond, or something as broad as that?
Potentially, we could frame it that way rather than, because we believe that the train line connection is a really great asset to leverage in that tourism space. in the city in under an hour, and vice versa for outwards. So, yes, thank you. Yep.
What's the difference in a hub and a centre? To me, the hub does nothing to me, but promote Gawler's position as a centre to explore South Australia. I mean, we've got the beautiful Barossa Valley, all those right next, and most people come to go to the valley.
Yep.
So, I mean, I just don't understand, is there a difference in the word, or
There's
is it just
a
a new
slight
way?
nuance in the terminology, and my take, and others might disagree, but a hub is a place you start from and you go out in spokes, whereas a centre is you're driving inwards to. So people will be out there staying and coming into Gawler, whereas the hub, you're staying here and heading out. That's my take on that difference.
I think I agree with Councillor Hennessy there about the region thing. Weirdly, I did bump into someone who was actually from Coober Pedy who came down the other day, but I think that was a mere coincidence, and they still weren't on their way to Coober Pedy. They were from Coober Pedy, but I agree with that. I think region is a lot.
Yep.
It gives a sort of a sharper focus to it. Promote new products and development. One thing which I guess we talk about significant unique architecture in there. There is an identity tied to Gawler, which I think goes well beyond just the architecture which we have. And I'm going to bring up a weird example, but even sitting in a heritage symposium the other day, chicken salt came up as something, because, and that's what, and whenever I'm interstate or somewhere, that's what I tell people. I say, oh, you know, I'm from where chicken salt was invented, and they love that. But there's things like that, and I'd love to get that. You know, we've got it downstairs here, which I don't think enough people that come to Gawler actually know about. You can get original recipe chicken stock downstairs at, Divine Dining do it.
Yep.
But things like that, I think there's some potentially some products and things that we can actually leverage in part of the Gawler identity, which is not just tied to the architecture, which is unique and which is sometimes it could be it's a bit gimmicky or it's a bit niche, but it's for the people who like that kind of thing. I think it would be useful. So if there's something in the marketing side of things there, I think that's a way we could improve rather than just the new sort of products and development and the architecture.
Yep. So this one is certainly around that visitor servicing. So it's more about destination development rather than built form development, just to clarify. So it's more about that. It's a terminology thing, and gotta love the English language. We have the same word for 5 different meanings. So that's realistically, it's about that tourism product development and destination, not the architectural built form development.
Yes, sorry, I see that now. I think that's because of the, okay.
Yep.
No, sorry, apologies.
That's all right. Yep.
Tired, but I think that's, that's great then. But also still point about, I think, the focus we can have on some things.
Yep. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, agreed with Councillor Hennessy at Region 3.1.2. Promote our products. Am I missing something there? Wouldn't it
Promote
be our products?
No.
New products.
New. So
just explain that, like as in
council's remit is not to develop tourism product. So the product should be developed by the tourism industry operators, and we'll promote those products. So we can assist in the marketing, but it's not necessarily our remit. We didn't want to narrow it to just Town of Gawler product because ours is going to be very limited. We'll do some. So we're looking at heritage trails and those sorts of things in the tourism space, but this is broader than that. It's tourism industry. Yep.
I forgot that for a minute. I was thinking our products, as in Gawler.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
That's going to need an awful lot of work. I mean, because we're well set in one with, there's lots of stories. We've got a heritage centre, we've got researchers. We actually know a lot of the stories. But engaging with businesses to then turn it into products will be quite new in this town. We've had, the volunteer guides doing walks and whatever. We've had Councillor Samble doing bus trips and tours and whatever, but it's a new area. I think it's needed, absolutely, and I think you know, I could think about half a dozen products that could come up immediately. So I look forward to that. I think people
Certainly agree, and that comment flows into the actions, and we're very narrow in our focus. So, yep. Yes, Ethan?
Thanks, David. Look, I'd probably cull all three and say we need to be promoting events, businesses and community. Community is a bit of a broad one because it could tie into region, but that's what I would do. If you said what's the three things we should be marketing to leverage tourism as catalyst for economic growth, it's our businesses, it's our events in particular, and then our community, which could encompass region, heritage, the services we offer in a sense. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
The only thing I would say regarding exploring South Australia, I'm pretty sure if your name's Brian Sample, you use our airfield to go to Maree for day trips. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, so Cooper Pedy, Maree, maybe Adelaide's third airport.
And perhaps what I was trying to get at before, and which I think ties in some of what Councillor White's just said, but I think there was a big focus in the previous tourism plan about that storytelling aspect and the story that we're trying to tell and the narrative we have. I think while it's okay to have events and stuff regularly, there needs to be something that ties them together. And if we're, you know, that sense of community and stuff and what makes Gawler Gawler, it's that, once again, tying that in. And if we have, if we're able to bring that together in a way where businesses are using that to their advantage and it's painting a bigger picture, I think that's important. I think while we shouldn't be forcing businesses to do certain things, I think we need something to be able to get on board with that tells a story of a larger community there.
Thank you. Yep. All right, the next area under the visitor is visitor surfacing. And this is around our VRC and its future value proposition, and also ensuring that we engage with visitors at all stages of travel in a consistent manner. Yes, Cody?
So would this include, for example, being in contact with our own B&Bs and hotels and that sort of thing, and, you know, being, like having, you know, they have maps, or, you know, like, because there's the council's facilities, but most visitors are, might be operating on a private level.
So it's certainly around how visitors access information and ensuring that that's a consistent message from the thought bubble of, oh, I might go around there, all the way through to actually when they go home and tell their friends how great it was that they went there. So that is certainly about it. Around the access to all of those little boutique accommodation providers, I'll be honest and say we don't have capacity to engage with every single Airbnb that we don't even know of in Gawler, but we can do it through accommodation providers who link into our visitor centre. So it's around offering that opportunity for them to engage with us and making it two-way. Yep.
It's interesting, engage consistently with visitors at all stages. Well, I took the CEO for a run around the town the other day, and we called into Ethan's camp, the new one down here opposite the St John Centre. And in that camp, there was a few vehicles that couldn't fit into the caravan park anyway, so it is really working. It took so long to get people in this town to understand that people do want an off-road park to park and things like that. And I spoke to 3 different people there. I also called in today and spoke to this guy in this real U-Butte Mercedes with a big $180,000 caravan on behind and everything. And I said, my question to them is, how did you get to know about this park? And the king of Facebook up here, Cody, you know how everybody reads his Facebook page. So the whole concept of how people get around the town or around the country and understand. But 4 people that were parked in there the other day when Chris and I went in there, all found out about that on Facebook.
Yep.
So, you know, there's a different concept nowadays, and visitor information centres are great, but the new, two new, what do you call them? One in Walker Place and up the visitor centre.
Oh, yeah, the digital display screens. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they, without a doubt, the only thing is they just need a sign on them to say what they are. They're not a toilet or whatever. They're an information thing. There's no signs on them, and everybody says to me, "What the hell are those things?" I said, "She's right. You go and try it. Press the button." And but Facebook and all that has changed the whole concept of having a tourism officer and 5 volunteers or whatever it may be. It's all changed.
Yep. We certainly agree, which is why we do want to focus on our online tourism service proposition, which is part of the internal workings of redefining roles and outcomes and bringing that VIC to a smaller footprint, because it is certainly an online presence that we need to build.
Yeah, and that was when I read it. It is, the whole crux is information.
Yep.
And we've talked about it before, but we haven't made much traction. I mean, talking to some people today, they chose their B&B because it was part of the heritage network. Now, the businesses will try and list with information centres they think will be easily found and attractive to use. We need to be one of those, and we haven't done a lot. So I look forward to that. And yes, Brian, online is definitely the way.
Yep. Beautiful. The third area is events in our visitor economy. And it's around attracting and securing a diverse calendar of events and ensuring that infrastructure is there to support it. Yes, Mick?
Yeah, I think that's great. And attracting and securing a diverse calendar of events, you know, getting things like Days on the Green. I like a good festival. I'm quite happy to get out there and shake it all day long if I have to. That's, but, you know, getting something more like that. We used to have it back here in Gawler. We had some events down at the race course and that sort of stuff, and bringing people in, utilising the train network that we've got now to get people in and out is really, really good. It works very well. It's worked very well for Manham, and the Barossa does it quite a bit there. I think we're missing a market and becoming a centre that can actually achieve that. So, and I'd like to be able to walk to and from the festival too, because sometimes it's difficult.
Understood. Yep.
I think this links the same thing. The key to this is having the calendar of events. There is no one-stop place to find out what is happening in Gawler across the year, which is not only for the visitor, but it's for the locals to know that they won't clash with something, get a sense of, you know, where are the busy periods. So that bringing together of all the events, promoting it, and allowing people to see it so that they can plan their particular contribution or bring in something is really important. And I think that's something we can do. I mean, again, both in an online but also perhaps in a visual. You know, so the screens might in fact have, you know, that type of thing.
Yep.
I remember years and years ago, I think it was Berry, there was an empty shop in the main street, and the community took it over and literally had whiteboards in the windows so that when you walked down at night you could see what was on, and that's how they kept themselves informed and stopped clashes, because they'd had a couple of nasty clashes of events and that had upset a few people. So yeah, we need to do the same thing in an online environment.
Isaac?
I think that's important. There's probably, to Councillor Hennessy's point about it being accessible to everyone, what's on and when, there's probably a lot of events at the moment which are good, but also could have other, you know, parts to them, or, you know, have partnerships with businesses and other organisations in the town that don't necessarily have that, just by virtue of the fact that there's no one to connect them currently, and they're relying on their existing relationships. But also, just initially when I saw that, I thought maybe it needed a caveat on it of events that actually bring an economic benefit to the town. But then I thought about it longer, and there is an important community aspect to that as well. But I think that is a balance that we do need to strike as well. While events are great from a community perspective, there does need to be an economic return on that. and there does need to be partnerships with the businesses, you know, so that it is an economic development strategy and not just a community strategy.
Just to flesh that out a little bit, Councillor Solomon, even those events that have social impact have an economic impact as well, because it creates a place that you want to live and be a part of, and through that, and living locally, there's an economic benefit that comes out of it as well. So there are, certainly, I agree, it's all about a diversity of events. All events do have an intrinsic link to economic development of some kind.
Yeah, I guess for me the issue is if we have criticisms of ratepayer money being spent on, or taxpayer money as it may be being spent on events, I want to be able to demonstrate a return on investment for that. If it's obviously there is a community return, but I do want to see a clear economic return, and it doesn't always need to break even, because there are other benefits. But there's also ways that we manage some of those events to enhance it, and that's something which with the Christmas parade is getting better and better. But you know, even in the first year there was that criticism. Second year it was excellent for the businesses that did open. As I've said before, Boost Juice ran out of watermelons, Zambreros had no meat left.
Correct.
Great, but some of the other businesses didn't benefit, and so I think as long as we can point, and that's fine, and I'm fine to defend that, that was a good event for some businesses, but at the same time, you know, we need something to point to go, yeah, this might not have benefited you this time, but we've got these other things going on. Here's how you could jump on board, etc.
Thank you. Yep. Yes, Brian?
I suppose I harp back again about the point of how everything's going electronically, but I do believe that so much the big buck stops with the South Australian Tourism Organisation. All the other areas like the Barossa and Burra, Goyder, wherever it is and so forth, they all have individual events from time to time. But the clashing of events this year in South Australia has been the worst ever. You know, like I'll just pick out a couple because I'm a reef head. They had the biggest ever down at Tailem Bend, drag racing and so forth event. On the same time, at Murray Bridge, 20 k's up the road, they had the biggest event for many, many days, and they wondered why some people couldn't go to both, you know, things like that. And when you went and looked into Google and asked what was on, it basically said it was on, but when you went into the Tourist Bureau, the South Australian Tourist Bureau, it didn't say it was on. So again, and the other part that as an older person is this, that the older person, when he retires and he buys his $100,000 caravan and his four-wheel drive and everything, he doesn't know what Google is. He's got to go to people like Cody and say, how do you use this bloody thing, and so forth, and find out what to do. And I think a lot of times older persons who love to go into a visitor information centre like the Barossa or whatever and talk to the ladies, and they say, here you are, here's a pile of maps, no worry. We'll go and sit around the fire tonight and read them and find out. But there's a better way. It's on your phone or it's on your laptop or whatever. I don't believe there's any training that helps in tourism. And if there is an event person, like for instance, we've got our local paper, and if you go in there to the bottom page and it says what's on, have a look in this week's Bunyip, what it's had in there. Oh, it's got a fancy dress party, it's got a come and chat down at Playford or whatever it may be. That's not promoting tourism in our area. You know, it's got to be done better, and again, it goes to electronics, I'm sure of it, because you know, like I know there's a rodeo on up at Kapunda, and I'm going to take Chris, obviously, he might have a ride on it and that sort of thing. Where did I get that from? I got it off of Google, because I know how to go in Google now, I can find it. But there's got to be a better communication and a lot of training to promote every event, because there's a lot of work goes into events and that. And recently we held the Gawler Swap Meet, thousands of people there, no worries whatsoever, and so forth. It wasn't anywhere other than on Facebook. It's because Cody put it there. So, you know, those sort of things mustn't happen. next year.
Thank you, Brian. Cody?
It sounds like I should be mentioned by name in the strategy, Brian. Because, but yeah, just on Councillor Solomon's point around businesses getting involved in the events, is there, I guess, something there that sort of covers the idea of getting businesses involved in a, like, because I've had a business come to me and they saw the Rotary Fair and said, how do I get involved in events like this? And I think there's just the wide range of, and I assume that's the role of the officer, but they're working off the strategy. So is there a part in that that would fit that?
So we can certainly work on that calendar of events and disseminating that information around the business involvement. They'll have to go to the event coordinators themselves, not to council. So Rotary Village Fair, for example, it's Rotary Club that does it, so they go to there. But it's sharing the calendar of events to the businesses is our function. So they understand what's happening around the place. They'll need to then engage with the relevant event deliverer, whether it be council or this group or that group or, yeah. Alrighty, moving on to the fourth area, in the visitor economy space, and this is experience development. So it's enhancing that experience, encouraging visitors to stay around longer, and attract and support First Nations tourism experiences.
How could Gawler do 343?
So Gawler can do 343 by leveraging our Cultural Heritage Survey of the River Corridor that we've done. We've already had initial engagement with Ghana about storytelling on that river corridor and making the best we can out of that, and then encouraging the right people to operate the right tourism experience products. So that's one example of how we can. Yes, Mick?
Just on point 3 there.
Yep.
The First Nations, you put that in as cultural tourism experiences. So we are combining all cultures, not just nothing against the First Nations, and tourism experience is very important. But we've got a lot of diverse culture here as well. So there's other parts that need to be involved in it as well. So we're not.
Kirsty, microphone. Kirsty, microphone, please.
Sorry, whilst we can include cultural in there, I'd like to keep the First Nations wording in there, specifically around grant funding applications for the future. Buzzwords.
Yeah.
but yeah, very important.
We could add the secondary for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What would be an action under encourage visitors to linger longer?
It's coming up.
Okay, cool.
Beautiful, keep moving. Last one, pillar-wise, thriving business, and that's supporting local businesses to grow, thrive and innovate. And this is all about existing, realistically. And it's around the business support areas. Have I clicked enough, Bryce? You've got the paper. There's only 3? Yeah, good.
Just as a, to the first one, 4.1.1, just to ensure council is local business friendly. I think sometimes, and I've made this point to Chris before, but actually I'll take the example when I was at the University of South Australia and I was on the board there, and we had what's called the Enterprise Hub, and we basically figured out that academics didn't know how to speak to business language, and businesses didn't understand what academics were talking about. And in order to get commercialised research, it was you needed them to be able to talk to each other. So there was sort of this midway point that we had, which was the enterprise hub, which the whole idea was to translate, all this academic work into something which could actually be used by industry. And for me, sometimes I think that there's really important planning principles that we have, and there's a range of other factors that we take into account as a council, which is really important for us to do. On the other hand, we do want to promote investment, and we do want to encourage businesses to do things the right way. And sometimes I think they don't necessarily belong in the same section of the organisation, the same part of the organisation. And so I think in terms of being business friendly, and this is just a personal comment, but I would love to see something which, while we're maintaining what we need to maintain on from a regulatory front, we've also got a section of the business which is talking about what's possible and helping to navigate that, not in a way which is acting as a de facto consultant, but which speaks to the economic development side, and I think that's a necessary tension.
Yep. Thank you.
Taking into consideration that we've got some major stores in the town, you know, the Woolworths, the Coles and the two Audis and all that sort of stuff and so forth, I never ever see too much one-to-one involvement with those huge organisations being involved in activities in the community and so forth. And we've got a Christmas parade again this year that's sponsored by somebody that's not in business in Gawler, which is fantastic, and so forth. I just wonder when you say facilitate local business support opportunities. I mean, you know, Cheapest Chips and the Reject and Woolies and everything draw people to Gawler because they advertise on television, and so they're pulling people to Gawler. That's great. And then hopefully they'll stay longer and go to the pub and go into Jimmy Vallelonga's and fill up and all that sort of stuff and so forth. But at the end of the day, I've felt for quite a while that there doesn't seem to be, there needs to be a closer network of these big businesses, which we're now getting in our town, you know, the two Audis, the two Coleses and things like that, which are magnificent. You know, they are just busy all the time, but they don't seem to be really part of the small businesses that are quite often there involved in promotion and some of the promotions we have, like the Carroll's by Candlelight or whatever it may be. I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem to fit as good as it should be.
Certainly, this is all about those smaller local businesses, not the multinational corporations. So this is for us to support our local business. In terms of local business, we're not necessarily talking about the Audis and the Woolworths, because they are conglomerates, multinationals, etc. Yes, they're a key part of our economy, 100%, and we'd love them to be more involved and actively engaged in community activity, but we are in the strategy space wanting to support those other local businesses in that space. Yep.
Ditto.
Yeah.
You find that they have their own, those conglomerates have their own networks. They're not interested in being involved in a lot of cases. There are some rarities, but any approach is normally directed to a Sydney-based marketing firm or their marketing department. So that's your Coles and Audis and what have you. There are some, obviously, like some of the banks do, you know, beyond and that, they do reach out to the community. But yes, as a general rule, small business.
Yep.
And by the way, we appoint 1, 2 and 1, 3, I gather.
Yes, indeed. We'll keep moving. Business growth, 2 on this one. It's advocating for that investment in local businesses and looking at facilitating business development opportunities. all seem relatively comfortable with those ones. We'll move to the next. Business resilience, 2 again. Championing the benefits of environmentally sustainable practices and championing business continuity planning.
Are you able to just expand on the continuity planning point?
So, from the working group discussions, this is about business resilience to natural disasters in there, non-natural, other disasters.
Okay.
The environmental sustainable practices are around that environmental sustainability. So it's being resilient to things that happen, essentially.
And that was, I think that makes sense because that was almost what I thought was missing because I read that as succession planning.
No.
And and I was going to mention that I thought that resilience in terms of, I mean, we see it at the moment with the hospitality industry, and unfortunately, with the hospitality industry, the immediate reaction is to go to pokies generally, but things like that, we see that playing out and that being quite hard for hospitality operators to keep open. So those kind of things I think are quite important, and particularly small businesses face a lot of pressure and costs and a regulatory burden which puts them at a disadvantage. So I think that's important for us to be in that space while not just being wary of the fact that generally business owners have experienced and know what they're doing, so try not to tell them how to suck eggs, but I think that for finding the wording on that would be good because to me that's still the continuity planning sounds a bit succession-like, but
it can involve that as an element, certainly, but business continuity in our language, and we'll need to define and work that through to communicate better, is around ensuring that your business continues regardless of what happens that's external to your control.
Sometimes I think the other thing I want to be aware of is that you never want someone to be worse off and closing down a business because they've failed, but at the same time, to make sure that we're progressive and moving forward, I do think sometimes businesses do come to a natural conclusion,
100%.
and we shouldn't be preventing that from happening.
No.
Provided it's in a good way and it's not in a way which is because someone literally can't operate anymore.
Yeah, understood. Yep.
One of the things that for years has been going on, that everybody to get to their place of work in the town have to park somewhere. And we all know that people don't park in front of the shop that they're employed under, that's for sure. I spoke to the Honourable Kevin Fisher back there about an idea that, here I go on again about the park that across the road, being, somebody call it Goose Island, but it's Noak's Park, just across the river where nobody is parked. That turned into a staff car park for the businesses of Gawler. Now, I've spoken to a few people since I spoke to Kevin about it, and they said, that's a fantastic idea, why don't you look at it? And the access is in off of 8th Street Road and so forth. All I've got to do is walk across the bridge and go to their shops, and all those cars where the staff's cars are parked in front of other people's shops will be there ready for the customer to park there. And it's so simple to leave it as a natural park. All it needs to be is lined in some way and so forth. But Kevin even thought it was a good idea, and he never agrees with me and that sort of thing. But it's worth looking at, because we know that the staff that come in a car, normally it's one person in a car, and you only got to stand in the main street and watch the cars drive down the street, and most of them only got one person in them. So we all need a car to get around, we all need a car to come to work and so forth. If we give that park, if you don't want to park other cars there, for the staff, so that's something that council is supporting for the traders of our town, especially in the town centre. I mean, I think it's still worthwhile looking at. It can work.
Thanks, Brian. Any other thoughts on these strategies? We'll move to the last set and we'll be whizzing through. Innovation and entrepreneurship, so this is encouraging the co-working spaces, etc., and connecting tertiary all the way through. Happy with those? Excellent. So that is essentially the crux of the economic development strategy. Yes?
Quick comment if
Yes,
we're finishing. I just note
We've
that
got a
we
little
had
bit more to go, but yeah.
we had this, oh, sorry. If we had the conversation there before about residential as well, and I think it's interesting to note today that in some of the national economic indicators that came out and ranked South Australia quite highly, housing was a focus of that and residential was a focus. So I think that's something which could be a particular contributor in the economic development space, strategic location of short-term and long-term accommodation depending on industry, etc.
Thank you. So the other document that you all received last week, and it is part of the next set of slides, which we're not going to spend time on. I just wanted to flick through to give you context. So this is essentially the end of the content of the strategy and in terms of pillars, focus areas, objective strategies, and we're done. This will be the set of work that we're wanting Council to adopt in December. Out of that becomes a whole heap of actions to deliver on these objectives and strategies. And we've started putting, I'll let you read them at your own leisure. You've got them all through the communique process. So Ethan, to your point, what's an example of an action? Look for the numbers, follow the bouncing ball, and here's all your examples. We've got a long list. We are conscious that this is too long. It is staff's responsibility to focus on those that are priorities, and it's an administrative function to implement the actions. So this stuff we're not actually asking Council to adopt, but we are wanting you to be aware of the types of actions that we think can deliver on these objectives and strategies. There's a lot here. You've got it all in your packs. Happy for feedback on them, but that won't be tonight's exercise. So that's through that process. Yes, Helen?
Just wondering then,
Yep.
the timeline of when you think those actions will come to Council. Okay, we're fine drafted. Okay.
Next steps.
Yes.
Timelines, etc. Suman has a job to refine the draft content in response to the briefing and all your feedback today. Finalise the draft strategy. Present the draft strategy for Council's approval to proceed to public consultation. And there's going to be a couple of steps in this. The first step is, as we mentioned, endorsing those content pillars, etc. at December. Then there's a body of work for Suman and team to do around the whole strategy, which is all those definitions and the context and all that to come in. That then gets presented to Council to go out to public consultation. That's a next year job in terms of time frame. Undertake the consultation and refine it in response to the community feedback, presenting it back to Council for endorsement. And it's at that point, through that secondary consultation phases, that those actions are elevated in terms of what we intend to deliver. They'll have timeframes on them and outcomes on them. Does that make sense? Yep. Hopefully that answers. And we'll present the final for Council's adoption before the end of financial year.
And just to reiterate, and to make it clear for those listening along at home, the RDA and Business Gawler have already had input into this process to this and will continue as it develops. Is that correct? Thank you.
So they're part of the reference group, working group internal.
Yep.
So they've had input into all of those pillars, objectives, strategies, and the actions that we've provided to Council that I've flicked through very quickly because there's a lot, and it's not tonight's discussion.
Yep.
They've had input into all of that.
Okay.
So the next step is for the team to go away, pretty it up, subject to Council's endorsement of the first section, pretty it up, bring it back and consult.
Yeah, because I think from my point of view, the three-way partnership between us and those two bodies is something that's, in my impression, new and needs to continue to make sure that the community realises that we've got lots of different aspects looking at this. So yeah, look forward to that happening. Thanks.
Thank you all for your time, and special thanks to Kevin, Jen and Laura for coming along and hearing all that conversation. Obviously it wasn't contribution at this point because they've done that before, but it's really great to have them in the room to hear that as we continue to collaborate on delivering the strategy. And on that note, I can exit stage left and leave it in Suman and Bryce's capable hands to finish it all off for us. Thanks very much.